Okay, so I have 2 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to get started. Just introduce myself. My name is Steve Cangiano. I'm the Director of Product Management for CMIC. And joining me is Candace Francis, one of our product managers focusing on our BI product as well as financials. And today the title of our webinar is Profiting from Data-Driven Decisions with CMIC Analytics. Now, the webinar is going to be 45 minutes long. We're going to target 30 minutes of content and 15 minutes of Q&A. So you'll notice in the GoToWebinar platform, there is a place where you can ask questions. We have moderators that are going to be reviewing those questions as they're entered, and is going to queue up a few of those questions for our presenters to review at the end of the webinar. So feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll be happy to get those answered at the end. So before I get into too much detail about our analytics package, I know some of you might be existing CMIC customers and others might be new to CMIC and not know much about us. So I just wanted to open up one slide and give you a little bit of background about our company. CMIC is based out of Toronto, Canada, and we focus exclusively on the construction industry. So we develop software exclusively for general contractors, subcontractors, project owners, really anyone that's involved in the construction workflow. And our products are kind of broken up into 2 main categories, as you see on the slide. The first category we'll talk about briefly is Cmic Enterprise. So Cmic Enterprise is all of our back office functionality. So you'll notice down at the bottom, there's a section for financials, human capital management, and asset management. So this is your construction ERP backend that all of your support staff would be working in. And that's what we market as Cmic Enterprise. We also have Cmic Field, which is another offering that focuses more on the operational features in CMIC. As you can see in the bottom, things like RFIs and drawings, punch list items, forecasting, daily journals. Those are some of the features that make up our field solution. And we have many customers that have chosen to use just our field applications, or maybe they've chosen to use enterprise. But most of our customers really leverage CMIC's entire construction platform, because both of these sets of features all sit on one single database platform. So that's one of the biggest values that CMIC brings to the table, is that all of these cross-department functions that you see here, they all live in one place. And that is probably best illustrated when customers take a look at our analytics platform, because using our analytics platform, we're able to report across all of these modules very seamlessly and gain some insights that we may not otherwise get very easily. A lot of times, these types of features are broken up into 2, 3, 4 different systems. And sure, you can plug in a Tableau or a Power BI to those systems, but gathering that data, securing that data, and just generating reports from that can be very difficult if they're all in different places. So our customers have really appreciated the fact that all of these features, whether they're just using enterprise, field, or both, sit on that same platform and use our analytics suite to report on all this data. Now, one thing I will mention, deployment strategy is sometimes brought up a little bit later, so I'm just going to address it now. CMIC is very flexible in that area. We offer on-premise deployment, so this could run on your own server. We also offer a cloud SaaS deployment, so this could run in our cloud, and it's a typical subscription model for users that like to leverage the system. And those 2 deployment options are available for all of our features in the system. Okay, without further ado, I want to jump into our agenda for today, because we don't have a ton of time and we have a lot of really nice features to show you. We're going to break up the presentation into 2 sections. I'm going to show you kind of a case study of the results of using our analytics applications and features, some of the things that you can expect to get out of our analytics platform. We'll go through some examples that really cross different departments, from financial dashboards to operations dashboards, and introduce a new feature we released this year called Card View, which is really exciting. And then after I go through some of those examples, we're going to kind of take a step back and reverse engineer how all of those things were built by users. And that's where Candace is going to come in and Candace is going to walk through some of the main components of our analytics suite. How do you select your data points that you want to work with? We have a tool called Catalog Builder that makes it really easy to do that. How are you going to visualize that data? Well, we have a tool called Dashboard Builder, which you'll see an illustration of right here on the right there. You'll see that there's different visualization components that we can use to hopefully be able to see the data a little bit better in the form of different charts, graphs, and pie charts. And then the last component we've developed, which is very handy as well, something called Query Builder, which makes it super easy for users to create fast reports. So maybe you don't want a full dashboard with a bunch of visualizations. You can use Query Builder just to create a quick table that's got the data you're looking for, and maybe dump that out to a PDF or dump it out to Excel, or maybe share it with a colleague. Those are some things that are really commonly done in Query Builder. So we're going to give you examples of all of those things today. But first, we're going to start off with an example of the end result, the end product, and show you our analytics suite. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is something we call the canvas. And the canvas is a really handy feature inside of our analytics suite that allows users to organize and sort all of their different dashboards and reports and make them very easily accessible. One thing I didn't mention during the introduction that I think is worth mentioning is that this analytics platform that you're seeing here, the ability to build the dashboards, be able to present them in this way, and be able to select all those data points, that is a standard set of features that is available with every license of CMIC. And that's something that is very unique to CMIC in the marketplace. We don't have an add-on, or you don't have to go to a separate third party to do this reporting. This is all something that CMIC develops and we make available for every user inside of CMIC. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I went too much further. So back to the canvas. So the canvas is just kind of a splash page, we'll call it, to organize and make all my dashboards available to a user. And this is totally configurable. I can move different sections around. I can build my groupings and make it really seamless for me to find what I'm looking for. But I'm going to go through a few different distinct examples of types of dashboards that can be built with analytics. Let's start with our accounts payable dashboard collection. And you'll notice that as I select my dashboard, it launches nicely inside the canvas. So it becomes a really nice launching pad or a menu to find all the dashboards that you're working with. But of course, you don't have to use this canvas. You can launch this outside of the canvas if you wanted to, but this is a really nice experience for the users to use. Now, we talked about Dashboard Builder, and that's the ability to visualize this data. So in this example, what I've done is we've brought in a bunch of different visualization components to visualize data from accounts payable. So we're looking at information like outstanding amount by vendor. We're going through and looking at what our days payable might be. We're also looking at how much we're paying on invoices by fiscal year, or actually fiscal month over the course of the year. So just kind of a generic example of some of the things that I could do in accounts payable. But very kind of in line with what I had mentioned on my first slide, because CMIC has one single platform for all of their features, you can seamlessly navigate between totally different departments in our technology stack. So I can jump between accounts payable and go right into job costs because all this data lives within the same place. So now I'm looking at a different collection of charts and graphs that are focused specifically on our job cost systems inside of CMIC. So existing customers, they're going to be used to this, but the ability to kind of seamlessly navigate between totally different departments, or in a lot of cases, customers might have different systems that do this. Being able to do this all with the analytic package is really nice in that way. Now, the dashboard builder is great if we want to do different types of visualizations of different data points. And I'm going to show you some examples that I used the dashboard builder to create in a minute. But I also mentioned in the first slide that we also have something called Query Builder. And that's where it's a really handy tool. If you want to bang out a really quick report, you don't really need pie charts and you don't need line graphs, but you want just a simple report with some data that you want to dump to a PDF. The Query Builder is really handy for that. So I'm going to show you an example of one like a job cost summary drill down. So this is a little bit different than the earlier dashboards. This is just a table with information, but I can grab columns from any number of different tables in our system and apply filters, add calculation columns, a number of different things, and I can create create these reports very quickly. And this report does a lot more than just a normal PDF report that you might create in a Jasper or Crystal solution. This actually has drill downs features right into it. So if I want to drill down on my budgeted cost for my St. John Hospital residential care project, I can drill down on that value and see all of the posted transactions that make up that number. So this is a place where you can take advantage of dashboards that are dynamic, where you can drill down, you can move columns around, you can pivot on different values. It's all really flexible, but then when the time comes, if you want to dump this to a flat report, you can dump it out to a PDF with one click, and it's going to dump out this whole report for me. And this one's pretty big, so it might take a couple seconds here. And this will dump out to a PDF in a launch in Bluebeam, just because that's how my computer is configured. And I now have a PDF copy of that report ready to go. And that's easy to export. So that's a feature that our users find really helpful. So between Dashboard Builder and Query Builder, you should be able to report on pretty much anything you can think of. And we continue to add more features all the time. One of the newer features that we added over the course of the last year was something called Card View. So what this is a different type of visualization. You see a lot of products today are using a Kanban style board where they're looking at things in columns or buckets. And we wanted to take that same idea, but we wanted to keep it open and not limit it to just a certain program that has this Kanban view. We've enabled Card View for any table inside of our analytics package. So if you created a table for something like a list of opportunities, which is, we call opportunity management as a product that we have that offers CRM features. So I have a bunch of opportunities that are in CMIC and I want to visualize them in Card View. I can launch them in a view that looks like this and then start pivoting and organizing my data however I want. So let's say I want to narrow this down to only look at opportunities inside of my CMIC construction company, but then organize things by stage. So this is going to kind of slice and dice those opportunities. So it's narrowing them down to only show me opportunities for my CMIC construction company. And it's going to narrow it down and say, these are all of your opportunities organized by sales stage. Or maybe I want to organize them by sales rep instead. So it's very fast to reorganize this data and make it really easy for you guys to review it. But as you'll notice, there's some very unique features in here where you'll notice if I go into stage code, if I organize these opportunities by stage, you'll see that all of these opportunities actually have a total here. So my total revenue or potential revenue is listed. And we've taken it a step further. Not only can you view things in Card View, which gives you these columns and you can reorganize them like I've been doing, but you can also update your records like this as well. So let's say I wanted to move an opportunity from the qualification stage to pre-bid. Well, I don't have to drill into the record and change a field. I can just grab the card and move it to the other bucket. So Card View provides a really nice way for users to visualize this data in a different way and be able to change everything like I just did, but it also creates a really nice user interface for you to hold a meeting with your staff and say, okay, what are we doing today? Do we need to move things between these buckets and have it automatically update those values for you as you're just moving these cards around to these different categories? So this is something we're really excited with, and we can think of a million different ways to implement this. Opportunities are probably one of the nicer examples, but action items, issues, change orders, the list goes on in different ways that you can visualize this data. The last thing that I want to do before I pass it over to Candace is just show you some kind of creative things that you can do with the analytics package, because lots of systems out there can do a great job with visualizing things in different types of charts and graphs, and you can get charts, table views like I showed you earlier. But one of the things that I think is unique about analytics is the ability to ask very specific questions of your data and then start driving insights based on those questions. So to illustrate this, I created a dashboard called PM Insights, and I just kind of randomly brought a few things together, but I wanted to show you guys some of the ways that I think that your users or yourselves maybe would probably be able to benefit from this the most. Because CMIC's features all sit on one single platform, it's very easy for me to ask questions that might have data that reside in different locations, right? So I might ask a question like, I want to know, I want to have a KPI or a metric of the most at-risk RFIs or things that might be impacting the profitability of my job. And I'm just going to rephrase that one more time. I want to create a KPI that helps me identify what projects might be most at risk to become less profitable or to lose money. And one of the examples that a customer gave us as a good indicator of that is what RFIs are on the project that have been flagged to have a potential cost impact, but have no linked potential change order. In some systems, you might call it a COR, change order request, or a PCO, potential change order. We call ours PCI, potential change item. But they mentioned that if a project has a lot of RFIs that have been flagged with potential cost impact and no potential change order linked to it, well, if the potential change order isn't in the system, then we're not going to be reviewing that potential change order during our OAC meetings. So we might be on the hook for that RFI change in scope because we haven't properly identified what the financial risk is. So that was a key KPI that they spent a bunch of time creating a report for before they had started using analytics. So I decided that I'm going to try and recreate that exact same KPI in analytics, and I was able to do it really quickly, and I created a nice layout that makes it very seamless for a user to find what they're looking for. So as you can see, I just put a quick filter here to filter out my at-risk RFIs by company. So I'm going to narrow this down to Cmic Construction Inc. It's a bigger company, as you can see, because I have a lot more at-risk RFIs for that Cmic construction company. But I've established a drill down here that lets me go into more detail. So I've identified that I have 3,000 at-risk RFIs. So I'm going to click the 3,000 at-risk RFIs, and I've designed this to drill me into a chart that's going to break down those at-risk RFIs by project. And as you can see, I have a clear winner here of my new community center project has 575 RFIs that are deemed at risk. And again, at risk is subjective. I put some conditions in here, like I mentioned, potential cost impact, no link change order, that I determined is a at-risk RFI, that it might actually cause us to lose money on this project. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way. That's what's really nice about analytics is you can add your own filters and you can add your own insights, your own unique perspectives about your jobs to try and have KPIs that are very targeted to how you guys do business. Once you've identified, okay, I got some clear winners here of my most at-risk projects, I can drill into any one of these. So I'm going to drill into my 10 Bay Street project with 357 at-risk RFIs. And you can see it very quickly drills me into a log of all of the at-risk RFIs. I can review them in more detail. I can organize them maybe by status if I want to. But I also have an option to just drill right into them. So I can go and open up the product and look at the details of this RFI where I flagged it as a cost impact potentially, but no link change. This entire set of dashboards that I just showed you, all the drill downs and everything I just did, that took me about 10 minutes to put together. It was a very easy thing for me to do. And that's one of the biggest things I want you to take away from the webinar today is that the analytics platform, it's going to give you all those visualizations, but because it's connected to CMIC and all of those features are in one place, and all that data is in one place, it's very easy to start asking these types of questions and create these very unique KPIs that hopefully will give you insights into your projects and allow you to be a little bit more proactive than reactive to try and correct things that may be going wrong. All right, so that's enough talking for me. I am going to pass it off to Candace so she can go through and show a little bit of the background of how I created these things. So we're going to go through how I select my data. We're going to go through and build some of the dashboards out, and then we'll take a look at some of the queries that we also offer. So I'm going to pass it over to Candace.
Thank you, Steve. All right, wonderful. So as Steve mentioned, there are three main components when it comes on to CMIC Analytics. The catalog builder, what we're looking at right now, this is where we're going to start. This is where we would structure our data. CMIC will provide you with a default data source. The data source is made up of all the different business areas in CMIC. So when we think about the financial folks, they may have more exposure to the GL, AP, AR, and maybe some job costs and job billing functions. Whereas the people in the field, they may have more flexibility when it comes on to the project initiation, the documents, drawings. So depending on where you're working and what data you're looking to report on, these business areas will really assist you when you're looking to report on information that resides in CMIC. Once you get the default, you will copy this into your own data source. We typically recommend you do so. And this just allows our users to define security. So depending on who you want to access to build this information, you can choose to assign roles, and there's a hierarchy. Roles can be assigned to the data source specifically, or you can go in to the specific sub folder, let's say general ledger, that particular area, you can assign roles here. So there's multiple tiers or levels where you can define where you want the individuals internally to access information and what information you want them to actually access when they're building these components out within our dashboard builder or query builder. There's lots of flexibility when we're looking at this information. So not only can you define your security, what about information that you're creating in CMIC that's not organic to the system? We have provided you guys with so much flexibility in defining your own, what we would call user-defined fields. So any fields that you're defining within the system are now reportable. So you're not limited to just standard fields within CMIC. So if you were to create a field in our software and you now want to report on it, whether utilizing our visualization components or let's say in a standard report, you do have the ability to add user-defined fields. So this is a simple user-defined field I created on the customer record, so I can maybe define a rating. I can always pull that in, and now when I want to report, I can pull in that particular field and see my customers based on rating. Just a simple example there. In addition to user-defined fields, our catalog allows us to structure the data as well as create calculations. Calculations in the system can be a string of data, it can be a date, or it can be a numerical value. So to give you a quick example, if I had a standard date string, I do have the ability to truncate that date string into just a year. So if we take a quick look at this example, my percent complete date, I now want to just look at the year value. So I can truncate that particular date into just equaling the year that particular transaction went through. Same concept for a month or a day, as well as we have the ability to do mathematical equations. So if you want to make an actual new column in the actual builder and report on it, you have the ability to say, I want to define my committed remaining in this example. And it's just a simple subtraction calculation. Of course, you do need to know the syntax. This one's very straightforward. We're just selecting the column from that particular table and lessening the other column to get that equation. But some of these do require some knowledge of syntax in order to make, let's say, a truncate or a concatenation of a field. All right. Once we have our data defined, the last main component is the join. So how are these data points relative to one another? So when we think about the joins related to the data set in CMIC, we will provide you with this information shipped. But there, of course, are areas that maybe we haven't defined. So if it's something that you want as a join, depending on the user, they can come in here and define the join. When I speak to joins, we have three different types: inners, left outer, and right outer. You traditionally will see a few inner joins. Sometimes it just really depends on how you want the data to be pulled out of the tables. So that's something that you would decide on depending on how you want to report on that data. This is more of an administrator's tool. So this administrator would typically define the joins. The end users, of course, if they know what they're doing, they can do that as well. But there is security defined behind this particular catalog builder. We typically would find this to be an admin function within the organization. All right, so now that we took a look at the catalog and some of the structure, let's go into Dashboard Builder. So Dashboard Builder is where you can define a collection of visualizations. Out of the box, CMIC, if you look to the right, provides you with 19 different visualizations that you can utilize for your reporting needs. When we think about the dashboard collection that we're looking at here, we have page filters as well as we have different ways to illustrate that the data set. Depending on the data that you're looking at, you do have different parameters. So the visualizations are one way to express the data, but the content related to the information when you're plugging it in will be dependent on the type of visual. So if we look at this particular visualization here, it's a numerical value, so I'm using my number visual. But if we go down to my actual bar graph, you'll see that my series has changed to just grouping and I can have a value. So the series and grouping methods do change depending on how you're reporting and what you're reporting on. So as you play with this, you'll see that some graphical representations make better sense than others. So that's something that you will get a handle on once you start to actually utilize the different dashboard elements. So how do we get the data within the actual dashboard? So earlier I showed you Catalog Builder. Catalog Builder is going to define what the user sees when they're in Dashboard Builder or Query Builder. These are all the business areas. In this particular example, I'm reporting on job costing. This is my tree of data that's been pulled in to report on. As you can see, if I were to change into AP, the end user has fields that are blue as well as fields that are gray. When I mentioned the joins, it's showing that the blue items have logical joins defined. Anything that's gray, there is no logical join defined within the system, so therefore you can't report across those areas. So there's always going to be ways to highlight where there's rationality or there's a link between data points and when there isn't, and then as the end user or administrator, you'll make the decision to create that join in order to report and get that data for the business. All right, so I want to just touch on how we can build some of these out. If we take a look at this pie chart, it's a very simple dashboard. I have these fields on the right-hand side. Currently, I'm just looking at my category name and the sum of spent to date. If I wanted to look at spent to date by job, all we're doing is simply just pulling in the field. The system highlights it in blue as soon as you know you can drop that particular value. Now I'm looking across jobs what my spent to date is. So that's very high level. If I were to actually bring back my category name, I'll actually apply a drill down because this is just giving me summarized data. I want to see the details related to my cost or even my job data. So the system does allow the drill down component. Steve had touched on a drill down earlier, but how we define the drill down is by simply relating this dashboard to another one in the system. Out of the box, we will provide you with standard dashboards and queries. So you don't have to start from scratch. So there'll be data there that you can either change to really fit your business, or of course, you can just start from scratch. So what I've done is I've defined a target into a job cost transaction query, which allows our users to now apply the drill down. So there's a link between this particular pie and the JC transaction query that I've defined in another query within the system. So if I look at my subcontracts, I can drill into that particular pie slice and I'll see all my subcontract costs within my company 10. But if I want to look at specific jobs, I can select one, or I could select a series of jobs to see how I've been spending when it comes on to subcontracts. If I want to take a look at, let's say, my billing items, I can do costs and billings. So lots of flexibility to get exposure to see how you're doing not only as a business, but across jobs and across your financials. So whether it's billings or costs that are coming into the business. All right, so the next component I want to touch on is really how we can define some filters. So we did some drill down components in addition to drill downs, we also want to define filters within the system because sometimes you want to make exceptions. So filters do allow for the user to get certain data reflected in the dashboard itself. So in this particular example, I have a sort. I'm looking at my spend to date for this dashboard on the left-hand side, and I'm filtering. So what we utilize in our standard filters out of the box, we have a variety of variables that will come shipped. So I'm just saying that I want to see anything greater than 0 or greater than 10,000 here. So if I want to change that value to, let's say, greater than 50,000, and I'll remove this component here, it will automatically reflect once the dashboard updates. In addition to the system-defined filters, you can also create your own, what we call substitution expressions, that allows you to define your own filters on the page. It can be a date, it can be based on a user, it can be based on an amount. So anything that you don't see within the standard filters, this is something you can create as an end user, and it will be added into the substitution expressions for you to use on the dashboards you feel would really represent your data in the best way. So the next area we're going to take a look at is moving into the actual query builder. So query builder is a little bit different than the dashboard builder. As you can see, there's no visualization component because, of course, we're building a query which we can execute into a report. But it does have a lot of dynamic functionality when it comes on to pivoting and really getting the specific data you want to see. So if we look here, I'm looking across all companies at vendor 0100. So this is, of course, if I have a multi-company scenario. But if I'm just a single company, it would just reflect my company data, what's going on with that vendor, and I have the subtotals. So when we're building out a lot of data, subtotals do really assist with separating the information, really applying a break depending on what the new field is. So what I mean by that is this break is going to be associated to the change in vendor. In order to define any subtotals, if I were to edit this particular one, it can be based on a sum, an average, account, so lots of different factors that you can apply within your subtotals. But I'm going to say I want a sum, and every time my vendor name changes, I want a total for that value. And you can append that value or choose to not do so. So it just depends on how you want that to look. When we update, essentially it'll apply that change based on the vendors that are listed. You do have the ability to apply these functions, whether it's ascending or descending order. It just depends on how you want to see and reflect on that data, whether it's from A to Z or Z to A, or if you want all your numbers first. In this scenario, you would go into ascending order. Secondly, when we think about how the data is validated across, so when we're actually plotting the information within the table, you can choose to sort and filter. So right now I'm sorting by company first, then vendor name. You do have flexibility on it, defining the sort within the page itself. So the main component that we recently finished building out was the card view. So earlier we mentioned that anything that comes into a query can be published via a card. So if we were to want to publish this in our analytics card, I would simply just grab some more fields to filter on when we're in card mode. So let's say I want to look at my company by vendors and just based on due date. I'm just going to move this over, and I want to actually change the definition. So when it comes onto my card, the definitions or the lines that I'll be able to see is up to 5. I can change this to showing 10. It just depends on how much real estate you want. But these are the first 5 columns that will show when the card is populated. So if I just hit the card view button, now I'll go into my card mode. And I had entered data in here, so let me just actually launch this again. I'm going to just remove this data just to show you some flexibility here. So I'm just going to launch it by cart view, and we'll be able to see all the invoices related to my company 10. If I want to see items based on vendor, I'll see items related to the vendors in my company. In addition to that, I can take a look at specific vendors. So I can group the vendors here or do a quick search for a specific vendor that I may want to actually report on. Let's go and find my advanced one. So when we're going into the vendor mode, I can essentially grab my architect vendor, and then I can see the invoices based on due date. And since I have my image, I can always drill into that image and components. So you can always launch source documents that are associated to that particular vendor that has come in. So that would be an invoice link, or you can launch a CMIC standard program where you're in the record itself. Once we've defined these dashboards or queries within the system, how do we publish them? These things can be published via getting the link. The link is going to be going to allow your users to launch the information via their console or their menu. So a brief example of that would be within CMIC, this is our standard platform, this is the console, and as you can see, I have a dashboard launched within the window. Or within the menu, as you see to the left, I can choose to apply it within my menu item. So I've defined, let's say I have a quick query here directly linked to my menu. So there's multiple ways you can embed these dashboards into the standard system, or you can of course just send out the link directly, but it just allows our users to embed this information into their day-to-day programs so they have access to these reports or dashboards for their day-to-day needs. Overall, CMIC does offer multiple ways to view and report your data across business areas. Whether it's dashboards, queries, or card views, users can choose which method is best to accurately analyze the information. At this point, I'm going to hand things back over to Steve for some closing remarks.
All right, so let me just broadcast my screen. Okay, great. So I appreciate that, Candace, and I'm going to move over to the next slide. I have about a little bit more than 15 minutes, so we're a little bit early, but that's okay. I know there have been quite a few questions that have been asked already, and I'm going to ask Shirin from our marketing team to start asking the questions that have been submitted by the attendees.
Thank you, Steve and Candice, for that great overview, highlighting the latest innovations in CMIC analytics. Like you said, we have quite a few questions in the panel from our audience. Starting with the first one, so when is the Canvas analytics option going to be available?
The Canvas option should have been available for quite a while now. I think Canvas can confirm the exact patch, but this should have been released at our last Connect conference, which would have been in November. Candace, do you know for the specific patches for existing customers when that would have been available?
I believe it was for v12.2. I want to say it's been out for a long time. We just are recently launching the default dashboards into the analytics. That's going to be in the next release. So that's okay. v12.11.1.
So I'll say for V10X, which is our legacy product, and our new R12 product, if you're on the latest patch for both of these, you should have access to this. And if you want to reach out to Candice or I via email, we can give you the specific patch number. But if you're on the current patch of either of those versions, you should have access to analytics.
Right. And another question is about using external data. So can I bring external data for analysis?
So I would say the short answer is yes, it is possible. There are a couple of answers that we would need to have to make sure that we know the full scope here. Now, if you are using our on-premise deployment of Cmic, you have a little bit more flexibility to hook in other databases from different systems. We've done some of that internally. We use our own, we use this BI tool for a lot of our internal reporting. So I would say, yes, it is possible, but there might be some limitations depending if you are a cloud customer or if you are running our on-prem system. So we need to know a little bit more about your tech stack.
There are a couple of questions on calculations. So where do we find out more information on calculations?
I'm going to defer to Candice for that one. I would imagine this should be pretty well documented.
Yes, this should be well documented in the actual manual for CMIC customers. This is something that could be, you can get more insight through the implementation or the consultants. They can give you the details on the type of calculations that can be made, but a lot of it is driven based on knowing the right syntax to execute these calculations within the BI. If you guys are not getting the right information through the actual manual within that has the calculation components, feel free to send me an email and I can provide you with some more details.
Great.
And a question about user guides. Can you publish a guide to help users to find the correct data points?
A guide for users to find the right data points. I mean, it's a bit of a broad question because we have quite a few features that are available on the platform. It's a combination of understanding the data structure and kind of having some familiarity of the components. One thing that I will mention is that we are continuing to ship updates to the product with more and more joins already put in place. So our goal with analytics is to ship an analytics product where we've taken the time to rename the database field names to something that's plain English that people would recognize, and to ship as many joins as possible to those different tables and views. And if for those of you that may not understand what I mean by joins, I'm basically talking about the relationships between the different areas of the database. And we ship joins that make sense, right? You want to be able to have a relationship between projects and RFIs. So we shipped obviously the joins between those two different tables. So it is our goal to try and ship as many of those joins as possible. And anytime a customer brings something like that to our attention, we try to include that in the standard. So we're trying to abstract a lot of that complexity by shipping analytics with as many joins as possible, but obviously sometimes you may need to create one yourself. So I'd say I don't really think we have a document specifically on that. It might be a good blog post for us to consider. So we'll take that back as some good feedback. But I would say your best bet is going to be our standard documentation to help understand the data structure, and then obviously our either consulting team or our support department should be able to help you out if there's some specific questions you have.
Right. The next question is, can you publish BI dashboards on mobile field?
That's a good one. So that is something that we are working on. I mean, BI or the analytics dashboards that you saw, everything we did was through a web browser. So if you have the URL, you can open up the URL on any browser you want, and you'll be able to view the dashboard. We are working on some new updates for mobile field in the coming months, and we are looking at different options to include some of those dashboards within the application. The exact scope is not clear yet, but it is something that's been mentioned to us before, and it is something that we're looking at really closely.
Right. The next question is related to data portability, and it says, can data from other systems be imported into this system, for example, Sage or other systems?
Yeah, so I mentioned that a little bit in the earlier question. So some of it would depend on your deployment model. So if you are an on-premise customer and you have direct access to the Cmic database, you would be able to do a little bit more with BI and might be able to hook in other data providers, like another database for Sage or for Salesforce or what have you. I would say that is not a standard plug and play that any user could do right out of the box. There is some technical understanding that would need to be there, but it is something that the analytics platform is capable of, the way it's been designed. And I referenced earlier that in our own company, we have hooked in different databases to the BI product to be able to do some reporting internally. So definitely reach out to your support rep and we can discuss our options, but we would need to know a little bit about the database you're trying to connect it to and what kind of customer you are and how you're using Cmic.
Thank you. So we have 1 minute left, and I guess time for one more question. So the catalog builder displayed 3 joins, which are common, like inner, right, and left. What about full outer joins or cross joins? Is Cmic aiming to communicate a basic definition of what those joins will do?
So I don't know if we're planning on adding any additional joins. Quite honestly, in terms of, I think part of the question is how do we know what the joins are going to do? That's all really well documented online. There's a million websites that'll explain, the difference between an inner join, left join, right join. So that's probably fine. I mean, Candice, do you know if we're planning on adding any additional types of joins? I don't think so.
Not that I know of. Of course, once again, this is a deployment question. For the folks who are on-prem, of course, they can define their own joins in the backend when they're building out their own views. But for the cloud, they're only going to have that exposure to those 3 joins there. I don't have that as a roadmap item at this point.
Good. That's actually a really good point, Candice, is that if you are technically inclined and you're running our full on-premise application, you could put some additional logic into an Oracle database an Oracle database view. So if you have some technical expertise in-house to do that, you can pretty much do anything that you could do in an Oracle view. You just make that view available to the BI tool. So there might be some options to help you out with that, depending on what you're looking for. But my general recommendation for any of these types of questions would be, reach out to our support staff, reach out to our consulting team, and if we know specifically what it is you're trying to do, we can usually recommend kind of a best practice recommendation on how to complete what you're looking to do.
And I think the last thing I'll add to that is for the cloud folks, I know that you guys don't have that much exposure to the backend, but we do assist you with building those out. So something had required a, let's say, right inner join, that's something that we would be able to build out and publish into your instance. We just do it for you instead of you guys going in the backend to do it for yourselves. Okay.
Thank you, Steve and Candice. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. We hope that the session was relevant and you found the content useful. A link to the recording would be made available in a separate communication shortly. We will ensure that those questions that were unanswered, we will get back to you through our teams. Thank you all once again, and I wish you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
When Steve was like,